Hello, welcome to Chess Tactics YouTube channel. My name is Chess Titan, and today I am going to explain to you the basics of chess. My goal for this YouTube channel is to inspire people to play chess because chess improves your memory power and concentration. So the chessboard is a 8 by 8 square with 64 individual squares. Um, each side, which I'm talking about the white side and black side, it has eight pawns, um, two rooks, two knights, two bishops, a queen, and a king. The queen and the king are usually referred to as the royalty. Um, so each individual column of the chessboard is referred to as a file. Let's say like the A file, B file, C file, D file, and so on. And the horizontal rows are called ranks, like first rank, second rank, third rank, and so on. So, um, the rules of the game is that a pawn can move two squares on its first move, but only one square after that. Keep in mind that every single pawn can move two squares on its starting move, but has to move only once after that. A pawn can also move one square if the player wishes. When a pawn moves two square and a pawn comes adjacent to that, not like this, but like this or like this, then the pawn can then capture the opposing pawn on the respective square. Like let's say this pawn moved to d4 and then this pawn moved to e5, then the d pawn can capture on the e5 square. Um, so the first rank. So remember when I said about the files and ranks. So those actually help you state like what square this is. So like this square is d4 because it is on the d file and on the fourth rank. Like basically the place where these like the square where these two lines intersect, that is d4. Let's say we want to find the e6 square. This square is e6 because the e file and the sixth rank intersect on that square. So um, that is why. So when a pawn is moving, it is just called d4. When a knight moves to like let's say knight c3, it is usually represented with the n and then the square number. For bishops, it is b and then the square number. For rooks, it is r and then the square number. For queens, it is q and the square number. And then for king, it's the k and the square number. So that is the notation of chess. The value of each piece is that each pawn is worth 1 point. So these 8 pawns combined are worth 8 points. The a rook is worth 5 points, so both rooks combined would equal 10 points. Uh, the knights and bishops are worth the same, 3 points. Um, and then the queen is worth 9 points, and the king is just infinite because if you lose the king or the king gets trapped, then the game's over. You lose, or like you beat the opponent, or like the game's over. Um, so each piece. So I explained earlier that the pawn can move two squares. So every single piece except for the knights, they cannot move until the pawns move. Like let's say like this pawn needs to like until this pawn moves, the queen cannot move, the bishop cannot move, the king can't move, etc. And the knight cannot move to this square. However, there's an exception. The knight can jump over pieces. Basically, it goes in a L shape, or you could think of it as going two squares like a pawn and going either left or right. Um, like let's say if a knight is in this position, this square is usually called an outpost for a knight because it controls the most amount of squares. Because this knight will control eight different squares as represented here. It will control this square, it will control these two squares, it will control these two squares, and it will control these two squares. So usually the best place for peace is in the center where they can control the most amount of territory. Except for a king. The king you want to keep safe. Um, so the knight moves in an L shape, and the pawns move two squares and then one square onward. So next, the bishops. The bishops cannot move until the pawns move, but after the pawns move, the bishop can go diagonally, like front or back. Let's say if the bishop was on d4, then the bishop can move back. Wait, it can move back, forward, and like these four directions. Um, and then a dark square bishop, or basically like the square that the bishop starts on, it can only move to that square. It cannot go on a light square. Like this is dark square bishop, so it cannot go onto light squares. Likewise, if it's a light square bishop and it cannot go to a dark square, it can only go to a light square. All right. Next are the rooks. The rooks, they can go in a straight line and horizontally or vertically. Um, However, they cannot usually move unless the pawn moves. So they can move in a straight line. So any piece except for a knight, they can move as long as they are not obstructed by any piece. Um, so that's how a rook moves. It moves horizontally and vertically. So next is the queen. So the queen is a combination of a rook and a bishop. So the queen, it can, like, let's say if the queen was on d4, a queen can move in a straight line in any direction. Like, it can move like horizontally, it can move diagonally, it can go backwards, forwards, and it can also go vertically. So a queen um is basically can move in a straight line in any direction. Okay, so now the king. So king is like the queen, except the king cannot move as many squares as he wants to. The king can only move in one square, like one square in any direction. Like it can move in any direction, but it can only move in one square. So rules of the game. So when a opponent's king is threatened, such as like this pawn moves and then this pawn moves and then this pawn moves, then the queen can go to h5 and check the king. So when the king is threatened, it is called a check. The three ways that your opponent can get off the check is that if they can move away from the check, if they can block the check, or if they can capture a checking piece. If the opposing king cannot get out of check, like if there are no more squares for them to go, or if there are no more pieces that can block the check or capture a checking piece, then the game is said to be checkmated, and the person who delivered the checkmate wins the game. Checkmate originated from the Iranian word shahmat, which means the king is paralyzed. So that is how the game. So the game can also end via like a draw, like an agreement by draw, forfeit on time, or by resignation. So that is how a chess game can end. And then yeah, that's it for today. In the next video, I'll explain how to actually play like a game of chess with a live demonstration. And yeah, that's it for today. So see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.